Hello guys, let's look at the January 2026 Visa Bulletin that was released yesterday, and I'm going to compare that with my predictions. And definitely there were a lot of good news related to particularly China and India categories where a lot of forward movements that we saw from the January 2026 Visa Bulletin. And also other categories or other countries did have a forward movement quite a bit in some areas. So the table on the top is where I shared in the past about my predictions of what it is going to be in the January 2026 Visa Bulletin on both final action date table and the data filing table. And I did predict based on the regular visa limits every year without considering any spillovers from the previous fiscal year. So, and that is going to be my monthly predictions ideally. And now that we know there are some spillovers coming in based on the dates that have been moved in the current visa bulletin, sorry, at least in the January 2026 visa bulletin, from the next visa bulletin predictions onwards up until end of this fiscal year, which is up to September 2026, I'm going to consider that spillover estimation as well in my predictions, which will help me to get closer to the date movements with that inclusion. Instead of staying closer to the ideal state, because now that we know there would be some spillovers, right? And also I have predicted the amount of spillovers that could possibly come in fiscal year 2026 in my previous video. So take a look at the quantity that I mentioned there. Okay, let's get into the quick analysis and the forward movements here. So from the final action date table for rest of the world EB1, it stayed current and it will continue to stay current. Same for EB1 Mexico and EB1 Philippines. So all of those categories from EB1 through EB3 other workers for rest of the world, Mexico and Philippines dates would identically follow what rest of the world dates are established. Okay, so I think at least for the rest of the fiscal year, I foresee that Mexico, Philippines will follow what the rest of the world dates will be. Okay, in the current fiscal year. So if you look at all these three areas for EB1, it's going to remain the same for the rest of the fiscal year. EB for EB2, I do see that I predicted for worst case scenario as 1 month forward movement and the best case scenario as 2 months forward movement. And positively, we had 2 months forward movement in the January 2026 Visa Bulletin for EB2 rest of the world. And the same thing applied for Mexico and Philippines. So all of these matched with the best case scenario prediction that I had. For EB3 skilled rest of the world, I predicted worst case as 2 weeks forward movement and best case as 1 month forward movement. In this case, it did not even meet the worst case scenario prediction I had. So it had 1 week forward movement, which is still a good news, which is not retrogressing at least. But I was anticipating more forward movements for EB3 skilled in the current month. And I think I still see that it will move forward. I will come to why I say that. It will move forward further in the coming months in a good shape, I believe. And I have a reason to say why I mean that. Okay. EB3 other workers, I predicted worst case as 2 weeks forward movement and best case as 1 month forward movement. So positively, it moved forward 1 month per my prediction here in the best case scenario. Okay, and same thing for Mexico and Philippines. Okay, moving to China, EB1, So I was with a regular visa limit cap um, applied. I was predicting that worst case scenario it would be 1 week forward movement, and best case scenario it would be 2 week forward movement. And positively, it matched with my best case scenario prediction for China AB1. It moved forward 2 weeks in January 2026 Visa Bulletin. Okay. EB2 China, I see, at least I predicted worst case as 1 week, or best case as 2 weeks, thinking that the regular visa limits are going to have that kind of a forward movement. But seems like there have been some spillovers applied, at least to EB2 in this case. I think, again, it's my speculation at this time. But with that, there was a huge forward movement for EB2 China. It moved forward 3 months, which is good news for them. EB3 skilled, I was again thinking 1 week of worst case forward movement and 2 weeks of best case forward movement. But again, it moved forward 1 month with the help of some additional numbers, I believe, at this time. Similarly, it was unknown zone for me. I think I mentioned this during my prediction as well in the past, that EB3 other workers for China, and also for India. At least for India, I know that it would move as is like EB3 skilled, but for China, it was unpredictable for me because there was not enough data for me to predict. So I kept it as no change so that because I don't have any prediction capability for EB3 other workers China. Okay. But good news is that it moved forward 1 year from 2017 to 2018. And there's not a lot of numbers under EB3 other workers for China. So it's unpredictable on how they're going to handle that movement there. Anyway, so it's a good news for the EB3 other workers China as well. Moving to EB1 India. So EB1 India, with a given backlog, with a given amount of visa limit per fiscal year, I was predicting worst case as 1 week forward movement, in best case as 2 weeks forward movement. And the result of January 2026 Visa Bulletin gave a good surprise for all of us, right? Which is it moved forward almost 10 months and 2 weeks, like 10.5 months altogether in one Visa Bulletin. And I know EB1 India have been waiting for a forward movement very, very long time. I know that it was quite very slow movement that was seen in the past, hardly, and now it's going to give the EB1 India candidates a good sense of feeling that there is a hope for forward movements in the future, right? And I think again it comes back to why that we see so much of forward movement specifically here in the backlog country areas is because I think there are extra numbers maybe applied here wherever there was a huge backlog and that was not due to which the certain areas were not moved at all, right? And that's my speculation here. So I think spillover numbers definitely helped from the previous year for EB1 India forward movement, which did not see much of a movements in the past fiscal year. Good news for EB1 India, and same for EB2 India. EB2 India again, it has a huge backlog overall compared to other categories, and it was definitely doubtful for me with a given per country cap limit for the fiscal year. I was anticipating worst cases 1 week forward movement and best cases 2 weeks here. But then it moved forward 2 months, and again with the help of additional numbers coming in from the previous fiscal year, which is again a great news for EB2 India as well. EB3 India, I predicted either it could be 2 weeks of worst case and 1 month of best case for both EB3 skilled and EB3 other workers India. And I did see more than 1 month forward movement here, which is 1 month and a 3 week forward movement, which is again a great news for EB3 India. So I think the additional numbers also applied across EB1 through EB3 other workers for China and India that helped quite a bit of forward movement in the one Visa Bulletin output, right? Which is definitely a good news for all of these categories here. So again, overall, with my final action date movement analysis, I do see that the spillover numbers are helping the forward movements, and I do predict in the coming months there will be consistent forward movements for all of these categories, not just for China and India, but there will be a consistent forward movements for all of the countries and from EB1 through EB3 other workers. We should see some consistent movements with additional numbers coming in, and backlogs are slowly getting resolved in this way. The other reason for that is USAS have also planning to use the data filing charts for the January 2026 Visa Bulletin. It is not going to point out for the final action date table, which is a good news in a way, because seems like there are more applications that USAS is waiting to receive, or acknowledging to receive in the current fiscal year, which means that there could be a possibility that more visas are available for the coming months. Um, so it's a good positive sign for the future in this way. All right. And that is the reason why I said in the beginning that even though the EB3 skill for rest of the world moved just 1 week in the January 2026 visa bulletin compared to other areas, um, because I think once USAS stops using the data filing chart and points out to final action date table, definitely EB3 skilled as will also see some consistent forward movements in coming months. And that's my definitely that's my speculation at this time. Okay. Data filing table, I did see some forward movements for rest of the world, Mexico and Philippines, um, in this way. So um, it did move forward, right? It had a positive forward movements. Where I did not see a major movement or anticipate major movement was between China and India. Okay. But then it definitely um, proved me wrong in this way because of the spillover numbers that were added, and what we are anticipating between China and India is going to sync up on EB1 category for China and India. It is going to continue to move together, in my opinion. So as you can see in the final action date table, both of them are 1st of February 2023. I think that will um, sync up and move together up to 1st of August 2023, at least by end of the fiscal year, as per current data, available data. Okay. And hopefully, if there are no upgrades or portings from other categories to EB1 for India and China, if the porting increases, if that increases the backlog, these dates might change because the backlog would increase, and this might come down on the dates. But if there are not a lot of backlog increase in the coming months due to porting, then we should be okay to achieve these dates. I think that's my prediction and speculation for that topic. Okay. I think overall, I do see that um, Visa Bulletin will, or all these categories under future Visa Bulletins will start to see a good amount of forward movements consistently. I think the forum is set that way from January 2026 bulletin onwards. That's what at least I see it from the output of January 2026 Visa Bulletin. Okay. If you have any questions on this, let me know. I can answer it as best as I can. I think good news are waiting for us in the coming months. Thank you.